Red Baron's new fully loaded hand-tossed style pizza is so full of topping.
Hold on there, partner. That there pizza is big enough for the both of us.
With a half pound of toppings and a soft, chewy crust. It sure is. Problem is, though, this town ain't. Introducing the Red Baron fully loaded hand-tossed style pizza. Share something awesome.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast with the spotlight on section hikers.
And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, your premier podcast with the spotlight on section hikers, and I am your host, Julie Jester Gayheart. I wanted to start off this week's episode with a big thank you to all of you that continue to listen to the podcast each week. For those that send me personal emails of thanks, for those of you that send me messages on Instagram, and to those that have donated to the Hiking Radio Network. Thank you all so much, and it keeps me motivated to continue bringing you all episodes each and every week. Another thank you to everyone that has recently signed up for my weekly email that comes out on Saturdays after the podcast releases. I typically share about future episodes, any special projects that I am working on, and any group hikes or workshops that I have coming up where we can connect. If you want to join that email list, you could always go to hikingradionetwork.com and sign up there to join the Jester Section Hiker email crew. And I should also add a huge thank you to Paul Collins or Skunk Ape. In addition to creating the social media artwork for all of the Hiking Radio Network shows, he has also been helping edit the audio for my show for the last several episodes, and that has been a huge help. Everything we do here at the Hiking Radio Network is a team effort, so thank you to everyone. I also wanted to mention that I had a listener reach out recently and ask me what type of equipment I use to create the podcast. So I put a list together of all that equipment and the software. You can find that gear list and all of my hiking gear list at jestersectionhiker.com. And of course, I will make sure all this information is in today's show notes for this episode. This week's Section Hiker Spotlight goes to our newest member of Jester's class of 2022 section hikers, Kelly McDonald. Here's a few words about Kelly from his bio. Kelly has been hiking, camping, and backpacking in the Canadian Rockies for over 35 years. Most weekends, you'll find him in the mountains year-round. He is also a Field Leader Instructor and Scouter and enjoys sharing what he's learned with others. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode, and now on to our first international section hiker and Canadian, Kelly McDonald. All right, you guys, welcome back to the podcast, and welcome. I think there's two things here. So welcome our first international section hiker and first Canadian, Kelly McDonald. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
I am so glad you reached out to me because I have just had the greatest time investigating you behind the scenes, and I found your website and you have a YouTube channel. I think our direct connection, Kelly, though, I will get right to it, is we are both official Dan Durston gearheads, and I think that's how you and I connected. So tell us the story of how you became a gearhead.
Sure. I mean, I had actually followed Dan and his wife when they hiked the Great Divide Trail a couple years ago. They actually yo-yoed it, starting at the Montana border and hiking about about 700 miles due north, so past Jasper. And for them, that was just the start, because they turned around, got to Kakwa Lake, and hiked all the way back. And so I had followed them through their YouTube videos they had put together, followed Dan on his website, saw that he had started designing some gear, and really enjoyed a lot of the articles where he kind of geeked out in, calculating, area versus volume and shapes and geometry. Heard him interview on a different podcast, and just really appreciated the way that the approach he took to design and gear. And I was looking for a one-person tent, and so it just happened to be the confluence of factors came together. Ordered his tent right after that, and I've kind of followed vicariously through the website, and of course it's now become a phenomenon in over the past few months and past year. And I'm a member of the Great Divide Trail Association, which Dan is actively involved in as well, so that get a chance to kind of connect with them and the great work that they're doing through the association.
And I also see in your background, so not only do you have a one-person tent, you also have Dan's backpack, which I am jealous of right now. I want to get my hands on one of those. I think it's called the DD40. Is that right?
Yeah. And again, that was just, the confluence of factors. I've been backpacking for, 40 years in the Canadian Rockies. But for a while, career, family kind of got in the way, and I wasn't getting out nearly as much. So about 10 years ago, I went and bought new gear. Things had changed so much since I was a much younger backpacker. And then I had 2 young kids. I was carrying a lot of their gear. I had I think it was like an 80-liter Gregory pack, which was great. I had a lot of fun adventures.
Oh God, those 80-liter Gregory packs, those Gregories and Ospreys.
Yeah, but it was a bit heavy. I was getting into a real kind of like, let's lighten the load, let's reduce what I'm carrying, and I was finding that I was just getting lost in an 80-liter pack. And that was around the time that Dan came out with the 40-liter pack. I was really enjoying his tent, so I figured, hey, I need to kind of downsize, get a lighter pack. And this is the first year I've used his pack exclusively for my trips last summer. And I really enjoyed it, and it allowed me to really become a lot more thoughtful. And I wouldn't say I'm ultra lightweight, but definitely getting into that base weight of the kind of the 15 pounds, which makes it a lot nicer to go further and faster when you're in the backcountry.
And I imagine it just makes it more comfortable.
Yeah.
When you have exactly what you need, and it's that lower weight, and you feel more comfortable, it does make it a better trek for sure.
Yeah, and you're. I mean, it makes you think through exactly what you're carrying and why you're carrying it, and kind of that whole balancing act between making sure you have what you need, but not necessarily just packing your fears and all the, well, maybe I might need this, but it definitely helps get you into that mindset of trying to go light.
And you don't have all those pockets and extra areas to shove stuff into like you would, the Gregory 80-liter or an Osprey or something like that. So you do have to be more strategic in your packing for sure.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that I learned, is because it is kind of one large kind of compartment, there's a bit more thinking, okay, well, whatever I put in first is what it's going to come out last, right? So when you have the big Gregory where you've got all sorts of pockets and places to unzip and get into your pack from all different directions, it makes you think a little bit more about the order you put things in, so you're not always having to unpack absolutely everything just to grab lunch.
Well, I am certainly jealous, and hopefully, if everything goes according to what Dan has put out on his website, later this spring, early summer, I might be able to get my hands on one. So I'm crossing my fingers here, hoping that will happen. But I am certainly glad you reached out to me, not only to connect through being a Durston gearhead, but also you are heavily involved in not only the Canadian Rockies, but the Great Divide Trail and the association. And you've also done, and the listeners heard this briefly in your bio, that you are a field instructor, you're a scouter, and you've also, like you said, you've been out doing this for over 40 years. So I guess I should start back with the interview and say, yes, you are from Canada, and yes, you get to hike in those gorgeous Canadian Rockies. But when did you actually start, I guess, section hiking the Great Divide Trail, or kind of walk us through, living in Canada, having the Rockies and having that wonderful terrain, and kind of when you got started hiking?
Sure. I mean, I'm incredibly fortunate and privileged. I mean, I grew up and I live today in Calgary, Alberta. So I'm, within 45 minutes of my house. I can be, right in the mountains and some of the best hiking that you can find just about anywhere. And like I've told folks, like within a 2-hour drive of my house, I can access trails to nearly 80 backcountry campgrounds. I mean, there's the world famous, Banff National Park. That's not that far away. More of the locals, we like to go to a place called Kananaskis, which is again a fantastic, area with campgrounds, trails, backcountry campsites as well. But my family's always been into to camping. So as a young kid, we'd pretty much every summer we'd be out in the Rockies camping. And then I was involved in Scouts myself, and that was when I was 13 years old, got to do my very first backcountry backpacking trip, and since then I've kind of been hooked on it. So every summer and even in the winter when the weather is nice, try to get out probably every other weekend out to the mountains in some way, shape, or form, whether it's hiking, camping, cross country skiing, downhill skiing. It's really lucky to be in this part of the world and have so much at my fingertips.
And you said Banff, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, that's on my bucket list. And he's like right there at it. So lucky indeed. So let's talk about real quick before we get into specifically what you're doing on the Great Divide Trail. You've also got your YouTube channel that you call Two Guys in the Woods, and you also have a website. So talk to us about those two things.
Yeah, and it kind of started with the website and the blog about it was in 2013, and that's when I really started getting back into to backpacking. And so a group of friends we went out on a trip. We probably, I think, were a little overambitious. It had been a little while, and we learned a lot on that trip. It didn't go the way that we had planned. We kind of laughed at getting into our first site, 11:30 at night, pitch black.
No.
and after that, it's like, you know what? I need to start kind of refreshing my knowledge and expertise, and just it is like riding a bike, but things change, and you get older, and the technology changes, and the gear changes, and so we started up kind of the website Two Guys in the Woods, just to kind of share the things that we were learning, the experiences we were having, some of our trip guides, and just kind of sharing our experiences, not only in the Canadian Rockies, but we've also did a great trip on the West Coast Trail a few years back on Vancouver Island, and that was a lot of fun. And then we got to do the Teton Crest Trail a few years back, and that was spectacular, and I'd love to get back there as well. So try to at least share what we've learned. And then about a year ago, kind of infrequently putting together a few videos on just some tips and tricks and gear reviews, and just sharing some of the knowledge and experience that I have with a wider audience.
And I've enjoyed watching your videos and going to your website. And originally when I went to your website, I thought your trail name was one name, which was the Dwarf, but it's actually a different name. So you're known as the Generous Dude, but tell us about both of those.
Sure. I mean, when we started up the website, both me and my friend Heiko, who's the second guy in the woods, we were both Tolkien fans. So Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. He's very much likes the ocean, so he does a lot of kayaking, And it just kind of, and I love the mountains. I can't get enough of the mountains. So we kind of started, kind of joking that I have more of those dwarf characteristics and that I'm being called to by the mountains, and he has more of those elf characteristics being called to by the sea. But so we kind of riffed with that for a little while when we were putting out our blog articles. But 2 years ago, when I was section hiking part of the GDT, I bumped into another group I was heading south at the time. They were heading north. I was going to be getting off of trail in the next couple of days and had a few extra dinner meals that I was carrying with me. And I figured, well, there's no point in me carrying them over a couple mountain passes. So I offered them up one morning. I said, hey, you want a couple extra dinners? I'm not going to need them. And they said, hey, man, that's so generous, dude. And I thought, you know what, that is that sounds like a trail name to me. So that's I kind of took that moniker on as the generous dude, and like to share the best I can as either on or off the trail.
And that is one thing about being a section hiker. You can typically unload things that you don't want to, carry that day out with you and hand them off to somebody else. So thank you, generous dude. So listen, let's get into the heart of this episode, which is going to be finding out about your section hiking on the Great Divide Trail. And I will be the first to say I've heard of the Great Divide Trail. I know it's phenomenal, but for those of us that want to learn more or may not know as much, tell us about the Great Divide Trail. Like, how many miles is it, directions, and just give us some logistical information.
Sure. Yeah. So the trail is it's about 680 miles. So when you compare it to things like the CDT or the Appalachian Trail, it's definitely a shorter trail, but it does start off where the southern terminus of the Great Divide Trail is the northern terminus of the Continental Divide Trail. So Glacier National Park on the Montana border, where it connects with Waterton Lakes National Park in Canada. And from there, it's 680, 690 miles, as closely as possible following the Continental Divide. So it passes through some pretty remote areas. It passes through some pretty popular, some of the most popular backcountry trails and routes in Banff and Jasper National Park. You're in kind of Crown land where you're like random dispersed camping, and sometimes it's more of a route. At other places you're in full featured backcountry campgrounds with well-maintained trails and bridges and everything. And so it's a little bit of everything in between. The trail is kind of divided into sections, A through G, starting at the south and heading up north. And the section I'm going to be doing this summer is called Section C. It's in some ways it's some people really call it kind of the crown jewel of the trail, but I mean all the parts that I've hiked and I haven't done it all, and that's one of my goals is to eventually hike it all, but I don't think there's any part that you can say is not scenic. But Section
that's
C,
what I've heard about the GDT. It's like just get on the trail.
Yeah. But there's some pretty spectacular sections in Section C. It is one of the harder ones to get permits for, and because of the nature of the trail, passing through so many different parks and so many jurisdictions, that's probably one of the big logistic things you need to figure out is permits, because it's not just like the Pacific Crest Trail where you can get one permit and that takes care for it. You've got to work with the national parks to get permits and the provincial parks to get permits, and they're separate, so you've got to kind of figure it out on your own. And that's like Section C, which is probably the most complex one for getting all the permits together. So I know every January when the parks open up their reservation lines, there's a mad scramble for everyone to get permits, because you've got not only GDT through hikers that are trying to get some of those campgrounds, but people that are just doing weekends or shorter section hikes. A lot of them are in fairly big demand. It sometimes it reminds me of everyone trying to get the Durston X-Mid a few months back, and you're trying to get concert tickets to the Rolling Stones or something. In some cases, some of the campgrounds along the Section C are just as popular. Thankfully, this summer I was able to get most of them and assemble an itinerary that's going to start kind of the end of July. So Section C is about 125 miles through. I said some of the most popular areas of Banff, Kootenay National Park, Mount Assiniboine on the BC side. People call that the Matterhorn of the Rockies. I was there a few years ago, and it's a spectacular area just to hike through, and people will come from all over the world just to go to Assiniboine as well. So it's really looking forward to it. There's a section called the Rock Wall in Kootenay National Park, which is again another really popular and spectacular section of trail. I've done bits of that and looking forward to getting that completed. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's like I said, a really spectacular section of trail that I'm looking for.
Wow. So are you having to figure out logistics like resupply, going into town, or is there a town for you to go into? Is there a way for you to do a resupply, or are you going to do like a full carry for 100 and something miles?
Yeah, so for this section, I'll be. I'm not planning to resupply. I'll be packing all my my food and equipment for that section. That is one of the big things that's a little bit different about the Great Divide Trail compared to, again, some of the other long trails in the U.S. is that it doesn't pass through a lot of towns along the trail. I mean, probably the at the very start you're in Waterton, which is Waterton Lakes Provincial Park, and then you'll pop into a few little hamlets along the way. Coleman is one when you finish Section A, which is a little tiny small town. You've got Field at the end of Section C. Jasper up at the north part between Section E and F. But for the most part, there's you're either looking at how do I get off trail to go into some of the larger centers to resupply. People will mail supply boxes to various either resorts and hotels and kind of supply points up and down the trail. So it does definitely take a little bit more planning to make sure that you're getting the supplies where you need them. But for this section, I'm probably going to be taking about 7 to 10 days to complete. So I've done 10-day carries before, so I'm not particularly worried about that. But if you're doing the whole trail, for sure, it is a bit more of a planning exercise that you need to go through.
And you are planning on doing this. When are you starting? It's July, right?
Yeah, and end of July. I think July 27th will be my first day on the trail. And I've actually had to, just because of the permits, I actually had to split it into two bits. So I'll do kind of the first 7 days, which will get me all the way to the that start of that Rockwall Trail that I'd mentioned. And then a little bit later in September, I've got a few more nights to finish off the Rockwall section. That the Rockwall is probably the most popular. There's one campground there called Flow Lake. Absolutely spectacular campground. I was been there about 2 years ago, and it's probably one of the single most popular backcountry campgrounds in the entire Parks Canada system. I think probably I'd say top 3. People are going there just for overnights, GDT, Rockwall. But it is a incredible place.
I'm just sitting here listening to you like, how in the world do I become a part of this? I mean, I just want, I am excited to follow along with your hike. And with that being said, tell people where they can follow you. Are you going to be doing videos? Are you going to do like any pre-stuff? Because I know this episode will come out as people are listening to this. It is the beginning of June, so you still have some prep to do before you start in July. So tell people where they can follow you.
Sure. I think probably the best 2 places to follow me. I mean, one is on my blog, so twoguysinthewoods.com, and I'll be posting probably an article or 2 in the lead up, and then of course when I'm done, I'll post a kind of a summary of the experience. Also have a Twitter channel, so 2 guys, the number 2, so 2 guys in the woods, that I'll probably be posting pictures and things on a little bit more of a real-time basis. Hoping to do a bit of a few videos while I'm on the trail as well. We'll see how that goes and kind of experiment with that medium a little bit more on this trip.
And you'll certainly put pictures out there too, because I could already tell you I want to see the pictures.
definitely.
Well, that will be exciting. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say you're going to have to come back on sometime in the fall because I want to follow up and see how your trip was. And before I let you go, how many miles do you have done on the GDT?
Since I started, I don't know if I've actually totaled it all up, but I've done a fair bit in Section A. So I've hiked through Waterton and some of the sections in what's called the Castle, which is down in southern Alberta. Also, I've done a lot of bits and pieces of Section C as well, just because of where I live and kind of hiking through there. I'd probably say of the 680 miles at some point over the past 40 years, I've probably hiked about 200 miles of that in various bits and pieces. But looking forward to kind of chaining that all together over the next couple of years and getting it completed. I'd love to do it as a single through hike, but unfortunately with career and mortgage and kids and family, it's pretty hard to kind of link together the 6 to 8 weeks I'd need to be able to do that.
And it sounds like, yes, that is tough. And that's one of the reasons we all section hike. Because like you said, careers and everything else that comes along with that. So I will close the episode by asking you a final question. I also know you're involved with the Great Divide Trail Association as well. Is that true? Is that correct?
So I started volunteering with them earlier this year, helping out. So just still starting to learn more about the organization. It's a great, fantastic group of people that are really dedicated to bringing, kind of continuing to develop the trail and get formal recognition for it, because it is, in the U.S. you've got the National Scenic Trails Act, which kind of formally recognizes a lot of the big trails in the U.S. and in Canada we don't have kind of that kind of same legal construct. So a lot of work to with all the different land managers to get the trail recognized and protected is something that's really the focus of the organization.
And it's volunteer based. I mean,
yep,
and it
entirely,
takes,
yeah.
Yeah. And I think sometimes here in the U.S. we take for granted, the National Scenic Trails and everything that comes with that. So thank you for volunteering for the association, and thank you for sharing with us. And Kelly, I'm going to hold you to it. You're going to have to come back and follow up. Yes. And we want to know about your trip, and we're going to get more into you also do more education, hiker education and things like that. So we're going to get into that as well. So Kelly, have an awesome trip, and we'll chat with you in the fall.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Thanks so much for joining me this week on the podcast, Kelly. I look forward to following along with you as you hike out on the Great Divide Trail this summer. I also look forward to connecting back with you sometime this fall to chat more about your work as a Field Leader Instructor with the Outdoor Council of Canada and your approach to the 10 essentials in risk management. Follow along with Kelly this summer over on his YouTube and Twitter account by searching for 2 Guys in the Woods. Next week, you will hear from our next member of Jester's class of 2022 section hikers, who is a mom of 2 girls, nanny to a third, and the owner of a successful home bakery business. She enjoys singing, playing her mountain dulcimer, and writing songs about the trail. Just a quick reminder to check out Kelly's guest bio that will be directly linked to this episode on the Jester Section Hiker page, which can be found by going to hikingradionetwork.com. You can also help support in the production of this podcast and all of our shows produced by the Hiking Radio Network by leaving us a donation while you're over there as well. You will see that donate button as you are looking at today's show notes, pictures, and Kelly's bio. Thanks for listening, be safe out there, and happy section hiking.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. You're wondering if I go wandering with you, what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way, if you ever get lost or if the trail leads you astray. The music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money, a Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.